I had pleaded with Olivia countless times, each plea a fragile hope, until she finally relented and agreed to accompany me and Mom back to our ancestral home for the Qingming Festival. This trip, steeped in tradition and familial piety, was deeply important to Mom. During the ancestor veneration ceremony, Mom became overwhelmed with emotion. Her breathing grew ragged, her hand clutched at her chest, and the color drained from her face. A heart attack, her lifelong affliction rearing its ugly head at the most poignant moment. From the moment Mom collapsed to the moment she breathed her last, Olivia was nowhere to be seen. She hadn't even bothered to show up. Mom passed away without her daughter-in-law by her side. As I was drowning in the suffocating grief, my childhood friend, Jason, heartlessly posted pictures of him and Olivia embracing, their faces beaming with saccharine sweet joy. Behind them, the backdrop of the moon god temple was unmistakable, a blatant declaration of their romantic bliss. Finally brought her to the moon god temple in my hometown, the caption gushed, where we made our most romantic wishes. Driven by a chilling premonition, I clicked on the location tag. My blood ran cold. The moon god temple. It was a mere 500 meters from the hospital where Mom had just passed away. 500 meters. My jaw clenched, teeth grinding against each other. I dialed Olivia's number, desperate for an explanation, some semblance of remorse. Her voice, when she finally answered, was chillingly devoid of emotion. "I've always done as I pleased," she stated flatly, each word like a shard of ice. "I do what I want, when I want. No one dictates my freedom. If you're going to nitpick, then let's just get a divorce." I'd lost count of how many times she'd thrown the word divorce around like a casual threat. But this time, the word resonated with a strange sense of liberation. This time, I decided to let go. The decision, once made, felt surprisingly lighter than I'd anticipated. But before I could even fully process it, she was already backtracking, attempting a clumsy reversal. By the time Mom's funeral arrangements were concluded, it was past 3 in the morning. Olivia, the dutiful daughter-in-law who had supposedly traveled across provinces to be here, couldn't even manage the final 500-meter stretch to pay her last respects to Mom. In the agonizingly slow hours that followed Mom's passing, Jason's social media became a relentless stream of updates. Videos of him and Olivia holding hands as they strolled through temples, posed for photos, and explored local scenic spots. It was a curated montage of manufactured happiness. Olivia, whose social media presence was typically as sparse as a desert, had, with jarring abruptness, begun posting updates, her content almost a carbon copy of Jason's. Their saccharine sweet interactions were met with a chorus of online praise. Commenters gushed about them being a match made in heaven, perfect for each other, and divinely ordained. I slammed my phone shut, biting back a scream of frustration. Olivia's actual husband, the one she had vowed to spend her life with, what did I even amount to in this twisted equation? She had traversed 5 provinces to reach my hometown, yet refused to walk a mere 500 meters for my mother. For me, my heartfelt pleas, my countless acts of devotion, were meaningless in the face of a single word from Jason. Later that evening, perhaps a flicker of guilt finally ignited in her conscience. Olivia called. Her tone was clipped, impatient. "What were you doing all day? Honestly, you're so inconsiderate. Don't you know I'm busy?" And then, the familiar, chilling refrain. "If you keep acting like this, we're getting a divorce." Her voice was as cold and detached as ever. I'd grown accustomed to this glacial indifference over the years. But tonight, something snapped. The accumulated pain, the raw grief, it was all too much. Yet, the words of complaint, the accusations that burned on my tongue, remained unspoken. I swallowed them down, a bitter lump in my throat. She knew. I was tethered to her, that I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. She had weaponized that love, using it to inflict countless, silent wounds. Silence. That's what I offered her in return. Words felt inadequate, incapable of expressing the maelstrom of emotions churning within me. She, the one in the wrong, still brandished divorce as a threat. 8 years, from the heady rush of first love to the suffocating stagnation of our marriage. 8 years punctuated by countless conflicts, each resolved by my capitulation, my silent retreat. This was conflict number N+1. But this time, it had struck at the rawest nerve, the most vulnerable part of my soul. This time, I wouldn't bow. This time, I would honor her choice. I took a deep, shuddering breath, my voice raspy with exhaustion and grief. I respect your decision, Olivia. Congratulations on your freedom. You won't have to pretend to worry about Mom's heart anymore. She's gone. Silence stretched from the other end of the line, an unnerving void. Just as I began to suspect she had hung up, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over me. Darkness descended, a heavy curtain falling over my consciousness. From the moment Mom had fallen ill, I had been running on fumes, solely responsible for everything. Exhaustion, grief, and the crushing weight of it all finally took their toll. I pitched forward, collapsing to the floor, my head hitting the hard surface with a sickening thud. Warmth bloomed on my forehead, spreading down my face, blood. And then, nothing. Faintly, through the receding fog of unconsciousness, I heard her voice, tinged with a tremor of something. Perhaps fear? I didn't know about your mom. David? David, wait for me. I'm coming. I'll be there soon. We'll face this together. When I finally blinked my eyes open, I was in a sterile hospital room, the crisp white sheets a stark contrast to the swirling darkness I had just escaped. A bandage was wrapped tightly around my forehead, a dull, throbbing ache a constant reminder of my fall. The chair beside my bed was empty. The room was silent and devoid of life. The doctor, during his rounds, had diagnosed me with exhaustion and dehydration. Overworked, son, he'd said with a weary sigh. You need rest. That head wound needs careful attention, regular cleaning, fresh dressings. We'll keep you for observation for a couple of days. 2 days crawled by with agonizing slowness. Olivia remained conspicuously absent, but Jason's social media feed continued its relentless, cheerful updates. Feeling a little under the weather lately, but she insisted on taking me to the hospital for a checkup. She's the best. She even put a hold on a major work project just to come back to my hometown with me. So touched. Doctor says I need plenty of rest. She's been by my side every moment, meticulously managing my rest schedule. A stark memory flashed in my mind. A night not long ago, I had stumbled home in a torrential downpour, shivering with fever. Olivia, her face etched with irritation, had grudgingly rummaged for medicine, tossing me pills without even offering a glass of water. Her voice, laced with condescension, echoed in my ears. These delicate hands of mine are designed for keyboards, David, not for housework, laundry, or cooking. I'm not like those other stay-at-home wives. I have ambitions, a career. If you can't handle it, the divorce papers are right there. I touched the bandage on my forehead, a bitter, self-deprecating smile twisting my lips. It was never about what she couldn't do. It was always about what she wouldn't. She wouldn't do things for me because she simply didn't want to. End of story. Jason, my childhood friend, the one I'd grown up with, scraped knees and shared secrets. After college, I'd established myself in Shanghai, but Jason had struggled, even facing homelessness in the sprawling metropolis. In his darkest hour, I had stepped in, offering him a position in our company's sales department. Later, I had even introduced him to Olivia, thinking I was doing them both a favor. He had leveraged the opportunity, climbing the corporate ladder with surprising speed. Initially, Olivia had looked down on Jason, questioning my charity case investment. Why are you doing this, David? It's a losing proposition. I'd always brushed it off, explaining, he's my friend, Liv. We go way back. I can't just leave him out in the cold. Little did I know, their interactions were becoming increasingly frequent, increasingly intimate, and I, slowly but surely, was being pushed to the periphery of Olivia's life. Especially lately, Olivia and I existed more as roommates than husband and wife. It felt like an eternity since we had shared a bed, a genuine moment of intimacy. Olivia was fiercely ambitious. 3 years ago, she had launched her own sales company. I had emptied my savings, even borrowed from my parents, to help her realize her dream. We had started from a damp, mold-infested basement apartment, clawing our way up to a swanky office in the city center, trading our beat-up bicycle for a gleaming Bentley. "I need a strong support system, David," she had said, her voice soft, almost pleading. "And I only have you." Then Jason entered the picture, and Olivia became pregnant. An accident, or perhaps something more calculated, led to a miscarriage. In her second month, Jason, conveniently, was the one who rushed her to the hospital, guilt-ridden and desperate to protect her. I had resigned from my stable government job, becoming a stay-at-home husband, taking care of her while she recovered. Once she was back on her feet, she insisted I remain at home, managing the household while she pursued our shared dreams on the front lines. Now, she was a celebrated sales guru, a legend in her field. And I had become a cliché, the quintessential trophy husband, a subject of whispered gossip and veiled contempt. These two, my childhood best friend and the woman I had loved for 8 years, were now, it seemed, a united front, meticulously plotting my expulsion from their lives. I couldn't bear to dwell on it any longer. Wiping away the tears that had escaped the corners of my eyes, I reached for my phone. This time, I initiated contact with Olivia. "I agree to the divorce," I typed, each word a liberation. "When we get back, let's gather the paperwork and go to the registry." Olivia's response was swift, almost panicked. She called immediately. "Don't be ridiculous, David," she pleaded, a sudden shift in tone. "We've been married for so long. Divorce? Neither of us wants that. I love you." "Cancel your flight," she continued, her voice softening, becoming almost seductive. "I drove here. Let's drive back together." Her words, once capable of setting my heart ablaze, now left me cold, numb. Silently, I switched my phone to airplane mode and booked a flight. Stepping out of the airport, I hailed a cab and went straight home. In the past, an emotional chasm like this between us would have sent me spiraling into a vortex of anxiety and despair. Olivia, in those moments, would observe my distress with detached amusement, her eyes radiating disdain and indifference. She treated my emotional turmoil as a pathetic display, a sign of weakness. During our earlier arguments about Jason, she would offer perfunctory explanations, flimsy denials. "Jason is your childhood friend, David. Don't be so insecure. I'm not that kind of woman. You're being paranoid, a jealous, petty man who doesn't trust his own wife or his best friend." Later, she dispensed with the pretense of explanation altogether, leaving me to rage and plead in a vacuum, my volcanic emotions eventually sputtering out, unacknowledged and unaddressed. But this time, clarity had dawned. Letting go was the only path to my own liberation. The memory of my past self, consumed by rage and desperation, must have been a truly repulsive sight, I realized. No wonder Olivia had looked at me with such disgust. Lost in thought, I didn't hear the key turning in the lock until the door clicked open. I glanced at the clock, 3 a.m. Subtly, I switched off the bedroom light and closed my eyes, feigning sleep. In the past, I would have immediately confronted her, demanding answers, fueled by jealousy and possessiveness, because I cared. But now, all I felt was an overwhelming weariness, a profound desire for sleep. Olivia entered the bedroom, her silhouette a soft outline in the dim light filtering from the hallway. "David," she whispered, her voice tentative, "are you asleep?" I remained motionless, silent. She closed the door softly and left. Soon, the sound of running water drifted from the bathroom. She was showering. Lulled by the rhythmic rush of water, I drifted into a genuine, dreamless sleep. The next morning, I didn't perform my usual ritual of preparing breakfast and setting it out on the table for her. Instead, I left the apartment, stepping out into the unfamiliar dawn. I needed to find a job, to become self-sufficient, abandoning my secure government job for Olivia's dream. What a fool I had been. Now, with Mom gone, With the scales finally lifted from my eyes, I saw everything with stark clarity. I wouldn't pour my entire life into Olivia anymore. She simply wasn't worth it. The idea of joining the military as a civilian officer had been simmering in the back of my mind. The recruitment exam was in 3 months. A new path, a new purpose. The day was spent job hunting, a surprisingly fulfilling endeavor. It had been a long time since I had felt this sense of purpose. Evening arrived quickly. I ate dinner out, then returned home. Olivia was sitting on the sofa when I walked in. "Aren't you supposed to be swamped at work?" I asked casually. "Late nights, 9 o'clock finishes?" "Not tonight," she replied, her tone flat. I nodded slowly, heading towards the bedroom to change. "David," she called out, stopping me in my tracks. "Where were you all day?" "Job hunting." After being idle at home for so long, why the sudden urge to work? "I can provide for you, you know." "Just wanting to fill my time," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "To feel productive." "But what about the house?" she asked, a flicker of something like anxiety in her eyes. "Laundry, housework, meals, those things need to be done." "We had an agreement, Olivia," I reminded her, my voice still calm. "Once you recovered, I was supposed to go back to work. That was years ago. Every time I brought it up, you shut me down. I need something to do. I'm restless. I need to be busy." Surprisingly, she didn't argue. I turned and walked into the bedroom. "David," she followed me, her voice softer now. "About your mother. I'm so sorry, David. I truly am. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for her, for you. But it wasn't intentional, David. Believe me," she rushed on, her words tumbling over each other. "Jason said he'd been feeling unwell, unlucky, like he was being haunted. As a friend, I just felt I should go with him. To the temple, you know? For support. These things, they can be unsettling. It's always better to have someone with you, for courage." A wave of coldness washed over me, a profound sense of isolation. My mother's life, my grief, weighed less in Olivia's calculus than Jason's superstitious anxieties. One was a matter of life and death. The other, a whimsical indulgence in the occult. Any rational person would see the stark difference in gravity. But her choices weren't dictated by logic, but by Jason. She prioritized Jason's courage over my mother's final moments, over my unbearable grief. "I understand, Olivia," I said, nodding slowly. "Yes, absolutely. Supernatural anxieties are definitely a priority. It's always best to have someone along for courage in those situations." My voice was flat, devoid of inflection. "Anyway," I continued, changing the subject abruptly, "I started a new job today, sales. And I've registered for the military civilian officer exam in 3 months. If you'll excuse me, I need to get back to work. Studying, I mean." "Oh," she asked, her brow furrowed. "Sales? Why not? Why not come work at our company?" I shook my head, not wanting to elaborate. She seemed to want to prolong the conversation, to bridge the widening chasm between us. "I'm a little hungry," she said hesitantly, her voice almost childlike. "I haven't had dinner yet." In the past, those words would have sent me springing to my feet, rushing to the kitchen to whip up her favorite dishes. Now, I felt nothing. No urgency, no desire to please. "I ate out," I replied, my gaze fixed on my study materials. "There are restaurants downstairs. Or you could order takeout." Without another word, I opened my books, immersing myself in the dense text, effectively dismissing her. I sensed her shock, the unspoken question in her eyes. My actions were completely out of sync with her expectations, with the David she knew, or thought she knew. She couldn't comprehend this new, detached version of me. With a sharp, resounding slam, she closed the bedroom door behind her and retreated. I knew, without looking, that she was angry. And so began our Cold War. In the past, a Cold War with Olivia would have plunged me into a state of agonizing anxiety, a desperate scramble to reconcile and restore harmony. But this time, the silence, the distance, felt liberating. A strange sense of peace settled over me. My mood lifted. In just a few days, I had devoured a substantial portion of the exam study materials. Having a goal, a direction, breathed new life into me. I even closed a significant deal at my new job, earning a commission of over $20,000. Mornings and evenings were now my own. No more elaborate breakfasts, no more meticulously prepared dinners. The licking dog routine, as Olivia would have snidely called it, was over. No more frantic calls or texts. No more anxious inquiries about her whereabouts. No more elaborate, nutritious meals awaiting her return. I fended for myself, grabbing quick, simple meals, completely indifferent to Olivia's needs or schedule. This newfound freedom, this reclaimed time, fueled my studies, sharpening my focus, accelerating my progress. And then, something unprecedented happened. In the protracted history of our emotionally fraught relationship, Olivia, for the first time, broke the stalemate. She initiated a truce. Perhaps it was my unexpected request for divorce. Perhaps it was the dawning realization that my detachment was genuine, that I was finally, truly, slipping away. Whatever the reason, Olivia transformed overnight. It was like a complete role reversal. The tables had turned. Now she was the one chasing me. She started picking me up and dropping me off at work, abruptly abandoning her supposed late nights at the office. Every evening, she personally prepared dinner, insisting we eat together, urging me to focus on my studies, promising to handle all the household chores. "You study, David," she'd say, her voice almost pleading. "I'll cook. Don't worry about the kitchen." In all our years together, she had never once cooked a meal for me. And yet, her culinary skills were surprisingly impressive. Her spicy eggplant dish was practically a perfect replica of my own recipe. She could cook. She had just chosen not to. Jason, I noticed, had been posting food pictures on his social media, almost daily. Looking at Olivia's meticulously prepared meals, comparing them to Jason's online food diaries, a chilling realization dawned. The dishes were strikingly similar, almost identical, like they were cooked by the same person. Not only did she forbid me from doing housework, she even began to actively encourage my studies, becoming an unexpected, almost unnerving cheerleader for my new ambition. Olivia's sudden, overwhelming attentiveness left me feeling deeply uneasy. Instead of warmth or relief, I felt suffocated. It was a strange, unsettling sensation, like a hedgehog, conditioned to protect itself, instinctively curling into a defensive ball, even when offered affection. I recognized the growing distance in my heart. I knew I couldn't continue this charade, this emotional limbo. I needed to sever the ties, to move on. So, I decided to confront her, to force the issue. "About what we discussed in our hometown," I began, my voice calm but firm. "The divorce, when should we?" Before I could finish the sentence, she abruptly announced a business trip, an urgent, unavoidable matter. "We'll talk when I get back, David," she said, her voice tight. "We'll sort everything out then." Whether this business trip was real or a convenient evasion tactic, I didn't know, and, surprisingly, didn't care to investigate. Unlike my past self, I felt no pang of disappointment, no surge of anxiety at her departure. Instead, a sense of profound relief washed over me. About 5 days into Olivia's business trip, I realized the small screen of my phone was straining my eyes as I studied. I decided to go to the office to retrieve my laptop. Entering Olivia's office, I found it occupied. She wasn't on a business trip. She was there, at work. The trip had been a fabrication, a lie. In that moment, the truth crystallized. She wasn't going on trips. She was running away. She was avoiding me. "You're not on a business trip?" I stated, the question rhetorical. "Ah, I just got back today," she stammered, her eyes darting around the room, avoiding mine. "Just arrived at the office." "Oh, really?" I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Because you usually tell me beforehand when you're coming back from a trip." Just then, a voice, dripping with righteous indignation, boomed from the doorway. "David, what the hell have you done to Olivia? She's been sleeping at the office for days, afraid to even go home." Jason stood there, a self-appointed knight in shining armor, his face contorted with manufactured outrage. In his eyes, I was the villain, the cruel husband driving his wife to despair. Towards Jason, I felt nothing but weary contempt. Words seemed futile. "Are you lying to me, Olivia?" I asked, turning back to her, ignoring Jason's outburst. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry, David. I've been lying. I didn't go on a trip." A heavy silence descended upon the office, thick and suffocating. She knew our relationship was fractured, irreparable. But instead of facing the reality, she chose to run, to hide, to evade the inevitable. I sighed, a long, weary exhalation. "Olivia," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "we really need to talk. Please, stop running away. Avoiding this won't change the outcome." Okay, she agreed quickly, too quickly. "Can we talk later? I have a client meeting soon. I don't want to go into a meeting with bad energy." "Fine," I conceded, nodding. I picked up my laptop from her desk. "I'll go back to work then. We'll talk later." As I turned to leave, she called out again, her voice suddenly softer, almost pleading. "David, wait. Won't you stay for a bit? We haven't seen each other in so long. Don't you miss me?" Her eyes, for the first time in what felt like forever, held a flicker of vulnerability, a desperate plea for connection. "You have work to do, Olivia," I said, my voice cold, devoid of emotion. "Unlike me, the house husband, you're a busy, important person. You run a big company. Your time is precious. I wouldn't want to waste it." The words, sharp and pointed, hung in the air between us. As I spoke, the flicker of hope in Olivia's eyes died, replaced by a chilling understanding. She paled, recognition dawning in her face. She remembered. Those words. They were hers. Echoes of her own dismissive cruelty, flung at me months ago, now returned to haunt her. I'm sorry, David," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I'm so sorry." Some lessons, I realized, could only be learned through personal pain, through experiencing the sting of your own words turned back upon you. Jason, unable to contain his self-righteous indignation, stepped forward, placing himself between Olivia and me. "David, look at what you've become. What kind of monster are you? How can you be so cold, so heartless to your own wife, after everything Olivia has done for you?" He turned to Olivia, his voice softening with an almost possessive tenderness. "He's being unreasonable, Olivia. You shouldn't apologize to him. It's him who should be begging you for forgiveness." And then, in a move that sent a jolt of cold revulsion through me, Jason stepped behind Olivia and wrapped his arms around her neck, pulling her into a possessive embrace. Olivia stiffened, a flicker of surprise, then discomfort, crossing her face. She tried to subtly pull away, but Jason's grip tightened, possessive, claiming. "I'm telling you, David," Jason declared, his voice dripping with false bravado. "If you won't care for Olivia, I will. Someone has to. Unlike you, I actually appreciate her. I know what she's worth." He looked at me, his eyes blazing with self-righteous fury. "How can you be so callous? Olivia has supported you for years, and this is how you repay her? You're ungrateful, David. You're, he sputtered, searching for the right insult. "Heartless." Looking at Jason, his arm possessively around Olivia's neck, his face contorted with righteous anger, I felt a wave of bitter irony wash over me. Who was truly heartless here? Who was truly ungrateful? The man I had rescued from the streets, the woman I had poured my life into, now stood united, casting me as the villain in their twisted narrative. Words failed me. What could I possibly say? I simply nodded, a slow, defeated inclination of my head. And then, I turned and walked away. As I reached the doorway, I paused, glancing back at Olivia, trapped in Jason's possessive embrace. "Don't worry, Olivia," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You won't be lonely." And then, I left. Quitting time came and went, but Olivia didn't return home. Later that evening, A WeChat message blinked onto my screen. Still swamped at work. We'll talk seriously when things calm down. I knew it was either avoidance or she simply hadn't formulated a strategy for our crumbling marriage. Or perhaps a chilling thought crept in. She had a strategy, and it didn't involve me. The word divorce, so casually tossed around by her, now hung heavy in the silence of the apartment. Easy to say, yes, but as I truly contemplated the finality of it, a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Olivia and I, we were interwoven, tangled threads of a shared history. 8 years. 8 years since we'd left university. 8 years since we'd started this life together. A life that had seen us rise from a damp basement to a gleaming penthouse. Surely, buried beneath the layers of resentment and indifference, there had to be something real, something meaningful. In the early days, I'd felt it, that genuine spark of affection from her. Memories, bittersweet now, flickered in my mind. Stolen kisses in cramped university hallways, shared bowls of instant noodles in our first dingy apartment, the exhilaration of our early business successes, each small victory celebrated with a cheap bottle of wine. Even in that cramped, damp basement, pedaling along on a rusty bike with peeling paint, we had faced hardship, hand in hand, a team against the world. A tremor of fear ran through me. What if I actually went through with it? What if I uttered the word divorce aloud, and she agreed? Would that be it? No turning back, no room for reconciliation? Deep down, a stubborn ember of love still flickered for her. 8 years wasn't just erased overnight. A foolish hope whispered that maybe, just maybe, if I just endured, if I just weathered this storm, she would change. Perhaps, as she matured, as life mellowed her, she would revert to the woman I had once known, the woman I had fallen in love with. But then, the image of her and Jason, their intertwined hands, their shared smiles, flashed in my mind. The raw, visceral jealousy clawed at my insides. No, I couldn't. I couldn't bear to watch her with another man, especially him. The thought of their intimacy, their shared laughter, it was a poison that seeped into my soul, corroding any lingering affection. Love, I realized with a chilling certainty, could indeed be exhausted, drained dry, leaving behind only bitter resentment. When even the thought of her could no longer elicit a flicker of emotion within me, when indifference replaced anger, I knew I was done, completely, irrevocably done. A sense of profound relief, tinged with a faint ache of regret, settled over me. The weight of expectation, the constant emotional tightrope walking, was finally gone. Freedom, that's what this felt like. This decision to divorce wasn't a rash impulse, a knee-jerk reaction to her cruelty. It was a culmination of weeks of agonizing self-reflection, of brutally honest introspection during those long, lonely nights. If love had died, what was the point of clinging to the corpse of a relationship? Why prolong the agony? I had once dreamt of a beautiful future, a life intertwined with hers, a shared tapestry of experiences. But dreams, I now understood, were just that, dreams. And at 27, my youth, the naive optimism of my early 20s, was fading. I would never recapture that initial, intoxicating rush of first love with Olivia. Never. But so what? Life was hard, yes, but it was still life. The road ahead might be uncertain, but it was still a road. And at 27, everything was still possible. I would find my footing, regain my balance, and start again. Rebuild, reimagine, rediscover. As for Olivia, as for this shattered relationship, I had given it my all. I had fought for it, pleaded for it, sacrificed for it. I had no regrets. None. Life was about choices, about taking chances, about letting go when you needed to. I had held on tightly, but now, it was time to release my grip. Looking back, I wouldn't mourn my wasted youth, my lost years. Instead, I recognized the crucible of experience that had forged me into something stronger, more resilient. The pain, the heartbreak, had sculpted me, refined me. I was more grounded, more centered, more present. The emotional roller coaster ride with Olivia had, paradoxically, brought me a strange sense of inner peace. This city, Shanghai, had witnessed the entire arc of our relationship, from its incandescent beginning to its slow, agonizing decline. I felt it in my bones. This chapter was closing. The final page was about to turn. Our story was nearing its end. Jason, my brother. I remembered him scavenging for scraps on the streets while I was building my career, working my way up. Back then, I'd helped him without hesitation, sharing what little I had, genuinely believing in our bond. I had always treated him like family, reassuring him that our friendship transcended money and status, that our connection was deeper than material possessions. Then, I'd brought him into the company, given him a leg up, a chance to rebuild his life. And during Olivia's convalescence, when I'd stepped back from my career to care for her, Jason, in a cruel twist of irony, started looking down on me, the very person who had lifted him out of despair. Initially, he'd been subtle, careful to maintain appearances, but as time went on, his disrespect grew bolder, more blatant. He would openly criticize me in front of Olivia, undermining my authority, subtly mocking my house husband status, and Olivia, instead of correcting him, had rewarded his treachery, promoting him to partner, gifting him 20% of the company's shares, a stake I had inadvertently helped build. Sometimes, drifting in the liminal space between sleep and wakefulness, I would question my own sanity. Was this the same Jason, the same kid I'd shared scraped knees and childhood secrets with? The Jason who now openly pursued my wife, who undermined me at every turn? From the moment he had crossed that line, the moment his intentions towards Olivia became clear, he ceased to be my brother. He became an adversary, a stranger, a betrayal incarnate. Time, indifferent to human drama, marched on. Unnoticed, unbidden, National Day arrived. Lost in the rhythm of work and study, I would have mindlessly gone to the office on the holiday itself, if not for the company-wide vacation reminder pinging on my phone. These past weeks had been unexpectedly tranquil. A simple routine had emerged. Work during the day, study in the evenings. Olivia's absence, her drama, her emotional demands, their absence had created a vacuum, a space for focus, for peace. My productivity at work soared. My study sessions became laser-focused. Then, on National Day itself, she returned. Olivia. She found me at home, and without preamble, knelt before me, a posture of abject humility I had never witnessed from her. David, I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few days. I was immature, selfish. I made so many mistakes. Please, forgive me. Olivia, I said, my voice calm, detached. Please, get up. You've never been one for theatrics. Let's sit down. Let's talk. She remained kneeling, her gaze fixed on the floor, murmuring about not being worthy of forgiveness, about staying there until I granted it. The whole scene felt staged, performative. I reached out, gently took her arm, and helped her to the sofa. She looked up at me, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. David, she began, her voice trembling. You forgive me? I shook my head slowly, deliberately. It's not about forgiveness, Olivia. It's about facing reality. It's about honesty. I don't want either of us to live in denial anymore. I want to be honest, finally. We have problems, Olivia. Deep problems. We need to acknowledge them, confront them. Running away, pretending they don't exist, that solves nothing. This time alone, this unexpected solitude, has given me clarity. I understand now what I truly want, what I truly need. And I've made my decision. Olivia, I paused, taking a deep breath, steeling myself for the final act. Olivia, from today onwards, let's. Before I could utter the word, before the finality of divorce could escape my lips, Olivia lunged forward, her hand clamping over my mouth, silencing me. Her eyes, wide and desperate, pleaded with me to stop. Don't say it, David, she begged, her voice choked with emotion. Please, don't say it. I know what you're going to say. Please, just don't. I understand now, David, she continued, her voice trembling. It's not you who can't live without me. It's me who can't live without you. All those things you did for me, all those sacrifices you made, I took them for granted. I thought they were my due. But now that they're gone, I realize how precious they were, how irreplaceable you are. She fumbled in her bag, pulling out a small, exquisitely wrapped gift box. With trembling fingers, she opened it, revealing a silk tie, a deep, rich blue, the exact shade I had always admired. She held it out to me, the box trembling in her outstretched hand. David, she whispered, her voice barely audible, let's make up. Please, let's go back to how we were. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want this Cold War to continue. This tie, she explained, her voice gaining a little strength, it's your favorite brand. And this particular style, it's a limited edition, nationwide. I had to pull so many strings, call in so many favors to find it. I looked at the tie, really looked at it. It was, undeniably, the real deal. A flicker of memory surfaced. I remembered seeing a similar tie online, different color, same design. I had shown it to her, casually asking her opinion. Do you think this looks good? She had barely glanced at it, dismissing it with a wave of her hand. Ugly, she'd scoffed, and so expensive. Only a fool would buy something like that. But my real intention, unspoken, had been to hint that I wanted it, that I admired it, that because of its price, I was seeking her implicit approval, her acknowledgement of my desire. Respect, that's all I craved. Simple respect. I remembered the sting of rejection, the quiet disappointment as I watched the tie sell out online. Scrolling past, sold out notices, a silent ache in my chest. David, she pleaded, her voice breaking, let's be like we used to be. Let's go back to the way things were. We can't go back, Olivia, I said, my voice flat, cold, devoid of emotion. There's no going back. Is it because I wasn't there when your mother passed? She asked, tears now streaming down her face, splashing onto the silk tie in her hands. My brow furrowed. Don't bring my mother into this, Olivia. The mention of Mom, of her death, felt like a cheap manipulation tactic. She sobbed harder, her words tumbling out between gasps. Ever since we came back from your hometown, from the Qingming Festival, everything changed. From the moment we returned, I've been absent. I failed you. I failed your mother. That's when it started, wasn't it? You stopped making breakfast. You stopped sending those long, rambling messages. When I told you I was going on a business trip, you didn't even offer to help me pack. No more calls, no matter how late I worked. No more concern. And most importantly, she continued, her voice barely a whisper, when Jason touches me, when he's close to me, it doesn't even bother you anymore. You don't react. You don't care. I shook my head again, slowly, deliberately. No, Olivia, that's not it. You're missing the point. It's not about one single event. Ice 3 feet deep is not frozen in a day. Remember that saying? Your absence at the funeral, Jason, those are just triggers. They're symptoms, not the disease itself. The problems were there long before. They've been accumulating, festering, eroding our relationship for a long time. This is just the inevitable outcome. I know, David, I know, she wept, her body shaking with sobs. I know I've been selfish, thoughtless. I know I've hurt you, countless times. Please, David, please, just give me one more chance. I'll change. I'll be the woman you want me to be. We can grow old together. Mom is gone now. I'm all you have left. I'm your only family now. Please, I repeated, my voice rising, a sharp edge creeping into it. Don't talk about my mother. Don't use her death to manipulate me. The raw pain of Mom's loss, combined with Olivia's blatant emotional manipulation, finally broke through my carefully constructed composure. You want to know why Mom was so emotional at the ancestor veneration ceremony? Why it triggered her heart condition? Let me tell you. It wasn't just about the ancestors, Olivia. It was about us. It was about you. Mom wasn't blind. She saw how you treated me. She saw the change in your attitude. It hurt her, Olivia, deeply. That trip home, that ancestor veneration. It wasn't just about tradition. She wanted to bring us home, together, as a family. She wanted to pray for us, for our relationship. She knew we were drifting apart. She was trying, in her own way, to save us. Her intentions were pure, Olivia. She just wanted us to be happy, together. And you, Olivia? You traveled across 5 provinces to reach my hometown, and then you spent your time with Jason, a virtual stranger compared to your own husband, abandoning me, abandoning your dying mother-in-law? But no, I said, cutting myself off, forcing my voice to remain even. I'm not saying this to accuse you, Olivia. Not anymore. I'm just trying to make you understand. We can't go back. There's no us to go back to. Do you know what my mother said to me in her last moments, Olivia, as she lay dying in my arms? Olivia looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen, her face streaked with tears. She said she regretted that she would never get to bring us, you and me, back to our ancestral home together, that it would be her life's greatest regret. And her last words to me, Olivia, her very last words, were, Don't you ever weight you yourself, David. Don't you ever demean yourself. Because you're my only son. And if you're hurting my heart, it hurts too. The memory of Mom's final words, the raw, unconditional love in her dying eyes, cracked my carefully constructed wall of indifference. My own eyes began to sting. Olivia dissolved completely. The carefully constructed facade of composure crumbled. She collapsed onto the floor, a broken, weeping figure, her sobs racking her body. I'm so sorry, David, she wailed, her voice barely intelligible through her tears. I'm so sorry. Please, she begged, her voice pleading, desperate. Please, let me make it up to you. Give me a chance to compensate. I'll make you breakfast every morning. I'll drive you to work and pick you up, no matter how busy I am. You'll be my everything, David. My whole world will revolve around you. Please don't leave me. I looked down at her, kneeling at my feet, tears streaming down her face, her voice raw with desperation. But in my heart, there was nothing. No anger, no pity, no anything. Just a vast, echoing emptiness. This wasn't what I wanted. This wasn't enough. This wasn't love. Seeing my cold, unmoved expression, Olivia's head dropped, her shoulders slumped in defeat. And I'll cut ties with Jason, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. I'll find a way to buy back his shares, get him out of the company. I promise. I swear. So, you knew all along? I asked, my voice flat, devoid of inflection. You understood perfectly well what you were doing? You knew it was wrong. You just didn't care? You just chose to do it anyway? You understand everything, Olivia, I continued, my voice hardening. You're perfectly capable of understanding right and wrong. You're not naive. You're not stupid. And yet, you still did all those things, knowing how much they would hurt me. And when I called you out on it, you got angry. You blamed me. You made me feel like I was the one in the wrong. I understand now, Olivia. You took my love for granted. You assumed I would never leave. You thought you could treat me any way you wanted, disrespect me, disrespect my mother, and I would just endure it. I would just keep coming back for more. Well, Mom is gone now, and with her, my last tie to you is severed. I'm not worried about her feelings anymore. I don't have to pretend anymore. And I'm done being your doormat, Olivia. I'm done being your emotional punching bag. My voice was firm, resolute. Olivia remained kneeling, sobbing, repeating her apologies, her pleas, her promises. But the words were just noise now, meaningless sounds in the vast emptiness that had opened up between us. Let's get divorced, Olivia, I said, the word finally, irrevocably spoken. It's the only way. It's the only way to free you, and to free me. No, David, no, she cried, her voice rising in panic. I do love you. I do. I've always loved you. I'm sorry, Olivia, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I can't feel it. All I feel is the indifference, neglect, betrayal. And Jason is the one you truly love. You're always there for him. You cater to his every whim. You're always ready to rush to his side. That's love, Olivia. What we have, what had it's not. The divorce papers are already prepared, I said, my voice flat, final. The agreement is ready. I'm not asking for anything. Keep the house. Keep everything. All I want is your signature. I'm moving out tonight. With that, I stepped around her, still kneeling on the floor, and began to pack my belongings, each item placed in a box a step further away from her, from our shared past. Olivia remained kneeling, motionless, her eyes vacant, tears silently tracing paths down her pale cheeks. A sharp rap on the door broke the heavy silence. I opened it to find Jason standing there, a smug, self-satisfied expression on his face. He brushed past me, barely acknowledging my presence, and strode into the apartment. Olivia, he called out, his voice laced with a possessive concern. I couldn't reach you. What's going on? He turned to Olivia, kneeling on the floor, her face tear-streaked and desolate. Then, his gaze shifted to me, a flicker of triumphant malice in his eyes. You, he sneered, pointing a finger at me. Did you hurt her? What did you do to Olivia? Then, his tone shifted, becoming urgent, almost frantic. Olivia, he pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. You have to help me. I'm selling 5% of my shares. I have to pay off my gambling debts. My house is mortgaged. I'm going to be homeless. Can I stay here for a while? Just until I get back on my feet? Jason, no, Olivia whispered, her voice weak, pleading. Please, just go. Don't make this worse. Don't make David misunderstand. No, I swear, Jason insisted, his voice rising in desperation. This is the last time. I promise. I'll never gamble again. He turned back to me, his eyes narrowing with sudden animosity. You, he spat, his voice venomous. You're bullying Olivia, aren't you? You're making her cry. This apartment is in Olivia's name, right? He demanded, his voice rising. Get out. Now. Get out of her house. I nodded slowly, calmly. Yes, Jason. I'm leaving. I'm packing now. You can move in right after I leave. It's all yours. I finished packing my boxes, the silence punctuated only by Olivia's soft sobs and Jason's increasingly smug pronouncements. This time, Olivia didn't try to stop me. She just watched, her eyes hollow, her spirit broken. As I walked out the door, Jason already comforting Olivia, wiping away her tears, a bitter laugh escaped my lips. The stage was set. The players were in place, and I was finally, mercifully, free. In the car, my phone buzzed. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. I answered. David, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the static. Is there really no chance? None at all? No, Olivia, I said, my voice firm, final. None. So this is really goodbye then, she asked, her voice trembling. Even as friends? We can't even be friends? No, Olivia, I repeated, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. There's no need. I understand, she whispered, a defeated sigh escaping her lips. I know I messed up, David. I know I destroyed everything. It's all my fault. Everything. After the National Day holiday, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau, right? For the divorce. I don't deserve to ask you to stay. I know that. Yes, Olivia, I confirmed. That's right. Before I could end the call, Jason's voice, loud, triumphant, boomed through the receiver. Zhang Zailing, you clueless idiot. You really don't know what you had, do you? Thanks for clearing out, buddy. This is my house now. I'm the man of the house now. I hung up, severing the last connection, the final thread. I was done. Completely, irrevocably, done. I still had my small 60-square-meter apartment in Shanghai, The one my parents had bought years ago, a humble refuge from the relentless ambition of the city. Returning there felt like coming home, even though my parents were gone. A sense of quiet peace settled over me, a feeling of solid ground beneath my feet. A new life was beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I felt optimistic. I threw myself into making the apartment my own, cleaning, decluttering, buying new furniture, creating a sanctuary for myself. Work became a focus, a source of purpose. I worked harder, chased deals, closed sales, found satisfaction in professional achievement. Evenings were dedicated to study, to preparing for the military civilian officer exam, to building a future independent of Olivia, independent of the wreckage of our past. Every day, from the moment I woke up to the moment I closed my eyes, I had something to do, something to strive for. Life was busy, yes, but it was also fulfilling. The divorce process was surprisingly smooth, almost anticlimactic. With the legal ties severed, I finally, truly, let go of Olivia, released the emotional baggage, embraced the uncharted territory of my new life. A life filled with possibility, with hope, with a quiet, growing sense of self-reliance. The day of the military civilian officer exam arrived. Stepping out of the exam hall, a wave of quiet confidence washed over me. I nailed it, I thought. A genuine, unshakable conviction. It wasn't arrogance, it was the quiet certainty that came from preparation, from dedication. I had poured myself into studying, mastering every concept, practicing every type of question. The exam paper, when I saw it, felt familiar, almost welcoming. I had answered every question, and I knew, with an almost unnerving certainty, that I had answered them all correctly. That evening, I treated myself to a lavish celebratory dinner, a quiet toast to myself, to my resilience, to my future. Just as I was savoring the last bite, a knock echoed at my door. The delivery driver from SF Express stood there, a package in hand. Confirming my name and address, he handed me the package and left. Puzzled, I tore open the wrapping. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, were two newly drafted divorce agreements and a sealed envelope. A wave of complex emotions washed over me. Sadness, regret, a strange sense of closure. I opened the envelope and began to read. David, the letter began, Olivia's familiar handwriting filling the page. I hope your exam went well today. I'm writing to preemptively congratulate you on passing. I know I've lost you completely. I understand the depth of the hurt I've caused you, a hurt that I may never be able to fully repair. The only way I know how to even begin to make amends is to return everything I took from you. Please, David, accept this. Don't feel obligated. The company, everything we built, started with the initial investment from your family. It's only right that it all goes back to you. Even after the divorce, I couldn't completely let you go. I was foolish enough to think I could still salvage something, that I could somehow win you back. Then, I remembered Jason. I had given him 20% of the company shares in a moment of misguided generosity. He had already gambled away 5%, but he still held 15%, a seemingly small percentage, but worth a staggering $8 million in cash. I couldn't bear the thought of that money falling into his hands, of him profiting from our pain, from your hard work. So, I devised a plan. I told him I was planning to take the company public. I offered to buy back his shares, promising him an even greater stake once the IPO was successful. He was suspicious, of course. He didn't believe me. So that night, the night you left, I had to prove my loyalty. I had to. I had to sleep with him, David. Only then did he believe me. Only then did he sign the contract, agreeing to sell back his shares. I managed to regain control of the company, to secure its future, and to ensure that Jason wouldn't benefit from it. I've liquidated everything, David. The company, the assets, everything. It's all yours now. But in doing so, in sleeping with Jason, I've destroyed any chance of ever earning your forgiveness, any chance of ever reconciling with you. I know that now, and I accept it. As you read this, I'll be on a plane, heading back to my hometown. I won't bother you again, David. I won't cross your path. I know I've lost you forever. And I know I will always love you. Olivia. And just like that, I became a multimillionaire. But the sudden wealth brought no joy, no elation. Instead, a quiet melancholy settled over me. My thoughts drifted to Mom, to her unwavering love, her quiet strength, and to Olivia. No, not to Olivia herself, but to the ghost of our past, to the memory of a love that had once felt so real, so enduring, to the echo of a dream that had shattered into a million pieces. At the end of my first year as a military civilian officer, I returned to my hometown alone for the ancestor veneration ceremony. Without Mom by my side, the familiar rituals felt hollow, tinged with a profound sadness. After the ceremony, I spent the Lunar New Year alone in the quiet stillness of our old family home. On the 5th day of the new year, standing before the portraits of Mom and Dad, I bowed 3 times. Mom, Dad, I murmured, I'm heading back to Shanghai today. I know. You both loved this place, that you never truly felt at home in the city. So, I won't take you with me, but I promise, I'll come back every year. I'll visit you often. Waiting for the bus at the village entrance, I was greeted by the usual intelligence squad of gossiping aunts and grandmothers, perched on stools, their eyes sharp, their tongues even sharper. I returned their greetings with a polite nod. Then, Auntie Lee, her eyes gleaming with conspiratorial excitement, leaned closer, lowering her voice to a stage whisper. David, did you hear? Your childhood friend, Jason, Zhang Baran, he's dead. Dead? I asked, a cold premonition settling in my stomach. In Macau, she hissed, her eyes widening for dramatic effect. Lost a fortune gambling, they say. Couldn't pay his debts. They cut off his hands and feet. Left him to die in the streets of Macau. The whole village is talking about it. I wasn't surprised. Jason's gambling addiction had always been a dark shadow looming over his life. While he had company shares, he could just about manage to stay afloat, to keep the debt collectors at bay. But without that financial lifeline, without Olivia, without me, his downfall had been inevitable. A tragic, brutal end, but in a way, a predictable one. He had sown the wind and reaped the whirlwind.